Today I want to talk about how I care for the Alocasia Zebrina, and I'm just going to give you my own personal experience and what I do with this plant. Firstly, lighting. I give this plant bright indirect light. If you put this plant in too dark an area, then it may lose its leaves, so make sure you give it lots of bright indirect light. The other thing I do is I make sure to use a chunky potting mix for this one. So the mix that I use is equal parts cocoa coir, orchid bark, and also perlite. And I like to make sure with this plant that I give it a pot that fits the root ball. I don't want to give it too much of a big pot because I don't want there to be too much excess soil, because that could cause it to rot. So we don't want the soil holding moisture for too long. However, when it comes to watering, this plant does like to stay moist. So you won't want to let this one dry out at all. It does not like that. So what I do is I keep the soil evenly moist but not wet, so you don't want it sopping wet. So a good way of making sure of this is to make sure that the substrate you use is well draining, so it's not holding too much water for too long. And I just check mine with my moisture meter every few days or so, and if it needs watering I'll water it, and if it doesn't I won't. But yeah, do not let this plant dry out completely. When it comes to fertilizing, I do fertilize this plant just the same way as I would all my other plants, and I usually just fertilize once every couple of weeks during spring and summer, and then I don't fertilise at all during winter if it's not growing. If it is growing, which would be a miracle for this Alocasia in my case, then I would fertilise it, but mine doesn't grow in winter, so I do not use fertiliser. Humidity. Well, I think this plant will probably enjoy a little bit of humidity. However, I don't actually have any here, so I'm just going to tell you what my personal experience is. And my personal experience is that I keep this in just normal room humidity. I'm from the UK, so it's not exactly that humid here. And this plant is fine. I haven't had any problems with humidity, so as I say, maybe it would appreciate a bit more humidity, but for me personally it seems to do fine just as it is in normal room humidity. So that's my experience. When it comes to repotting, I would just wait until your plant outgrows the pot, wait until it becomes root bound. These plants don't like to be in huge pots, so maybe just wait for the roots to start growing out of the bottom of the pot. Propagation. So with Alocasias, propagation is actually really easy. They actually produce what's called a corm, and a corm is just like a tiny bulb really, and you usually find these in the soil around the roots. So when you do repot your plant, have a look in there and see if you can find any corms, and what you can do is you can propagate these corms and grow new baby Alocasias from them. Okay, so I do just want to say a bit about dormancy. Now, sometimes these plants will go dormant and die back during the winter months, and this doesn't always happen. One of the ways you can try and prevent this is by giving the plant plenty of light, so move it closer to a window in winter and make sure it doesn't think that it's going dark, if you know what I mean. So sort of trick the plant into not realising it's winter by giving it more light. I usually move mine a bit closer to the window. But if your plant does go dormant during the winter, if it starts losing all its leaves, they go yellow and they all drop off, don't throw your plant away, because chances are it may well come back in spring. So just keep your plant lightly moist, and yeah, keep it in a bright indirect area, and it's most likely going to come back for you. So don't throw it away, it will probably grow back. Alocasia Zebrina is actually quite a common Alocasia. It's not expensive, so if you feel a little bit nervous about trying an Alocasia, give this one a go. If you don't succeed the first time, it's not the end of the world. As I say, this one's fairly common and it's fairly cheap to get a hold of too, so I think it's a really good kind of introduction into Alocasias. Really hope you found that care guide useful. If you did, Please do subscribe to the channel for more, as I'd love to help you out with my tips and tricks in the future. And a big thank you for joining me today. I'll see you in the next one.